Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on master's programs in Russian, East European, and Eurasian studies fields. This is our second event sponsored by the REEES Northeast or REEESNe network and is part of a lineup of programs throughout the academic year. In October, we had a webinar with REEESNe institution alumni who have gone on to hold non-academic careers related to these fields. We should have our new website up and running soon, and there you can find a recording of that webinar if you missed it, as well as eventually a recording of today's webinar. Other events on our horizon include a REEESNe student conference in April, so look soon for opportunities to register to attend that and to submit proposals if you would like to present on your REEES-related experience or research or writing. Today's event focuses on terminal standalone master's programs. It does not address master's programs that are integrated into PhD programs or into paths toward a strictly academic career. We imagine that many of your undergraduate professors probably can advise you on those types of programs. While some students do, of course, go on to pursue PhDs and academic careers after taking terminal master's degrees, the MA programs that we will be discussing today typically prepare students for many other types of careers as well. Here to offer some guidance for this is Dr. Laura Schlosberg, who holds a bachelor's from Wellesley College, as well as a PhD in Russian history from Duke, and who worked at Harvard before moving on to Stanford and becoming Assistant Dean of Academic and Curricular Support in the School of Humanities and Science. Following Dr. Schlosberg's presentation, we will have some time for questions. Please write them in the Q&A function, not in the chat. That way we'll be sure to see them in time. This function is labeled Q&A and should be next to the hand-shaped icon at the bottom of your screen. Then we will continue with some presentations from representatives of 7 institutions in the Northeast that offer MA programs in REEES fields, followed by a longer Q&A period. And then finally, separate Zoom meetings with each of those institutions' representatives, where you will be able to speak more openly and pointedly about specific programs. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Laura Schlosberg.
Hello, Ian. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you for inviting an interloper from the West Coast to be part of this. I come to you not as, and from my background, not as somebody who has a terminal master's, but as somebody who has 20 years of experience advising undergraduates and about 5 years of experience advising graduate students and recent doctoral candidates. So what I'm hoping to do is just give you some food for thought as you're thinking about whether you should apply for a master's in the field, a terminal master's. And this would be the kind of conversation I would have with you if each one of you was sitting next to me. So what I would like to ask you all to do is to think, if you're thinking about a master's, think about how it fits into your long-term goals and the skills you need to achieve either an immediate goal, a longer-term goal. Think about what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you want to devote 1 or 2 years of your life to doing. Think about how you learn best. Do you do well with group projects? Do you like to just throw yourself into a text and do close reading? Think about who else might have traveled this path that might have cleared the way for you. So a part of this question, it's really important that you know yourself as a learner and know where you thrive. And this may be a comfort to some of you, but may not be. Applying to a terminal master's program is nothing like applying to your undergraduate institution. You think more about aligning your interests with a program and an institution. And the questions on this slide are the kind of questions that you may be prompted to respond to in an essay for a master's program application. And our experts here can tell you more about that. But this is something where it's really important that you think intentionally about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you're selecting the institution that you want to apply to. If you're not ready to take that step or you want to look at it from another direction, think about reverse engineering. So if there's a job you want, or 3, think of 3, and I'm happy to walk through an exercise on how to come up with 3 possible jobs. You go search for some job descriptions and then look at the list of skills and experience they require. Do you have some of those? Do you need others that you can develop through a terminal master's program? I like to call this following the footsteps. Think about your role models. Who are people you admire in the field, or people in that your institution promotes, or that you know are doing exciting work in the field? If you don't know who they are, I'm pretty confident your institution has an alumni database, or you have alumni on LinkedIn that you can search for. You can also search by institution in LinkedIn and see who has a master's degree in the field. Or if they have your dream job at a publication, at a nonprofit, in a government organization, in a business, look at their career pathway. Usually people have filled out on LinkedIn their pathway to where they are now. Feel free to reach out to them for an informational interview, especially if they're alumni. They're often very open and friendly to reaching out to someone from their institution and helping current students. And if you have a role model, I just read this recently, it's okay to send a fan letter to someone, like if it's a Fiona Hill, or if it's a Condoleezza Rice, it's okay to write a fan letter. But don't be all fan-ish, but you'll be acknowledging that you value them and you would appreciate their thoughts or insights. So once you've started to see the kind of pathways that are out there and how they align with your goals, it's time to start thinking about degree programs. And as our colleagues will soon clarify, REEES programs are interdisciplinary. They're not just a deeper dive into economics or linguistics or literature, although those will all be part of it. So you want to think about who are the scholars in your field that you find interesting or doing really neat work, and you may find them through your course syllabi or through readings you've done, or through talks you've heard from various centers or the REEESNe network. Think about you may want to look at a professional organization like the Association for Slavic, East European, and Eurasian Studies. They have at least 5, maybe 6,000 or more members who are working in all sorts of areas. And they have a range of backgrounds. So look at them. Talk to your faculty if you're really interested in a certain field of expertise. They may have their own network of colleagues or graduate student colleagues or people they know through people they know who can point you to the right program. When you're thinking about degree programs, also think about your interests. Some institutions have strength. Most institutions, I would believe, and I'm going to look at my colleagues, you have a solid Russian program, but there may be other regional areas that they have a strength in, or some faculty expertise, whether it's the Baltic, Central Asia, Poland, Armenia. They may also have disciplinary strengths. So they may have a cluster of experts in linguistics or 18th century literature. So do a little deeper dive and think about where those are, because that's also going to help you strategize and apply intentionally, so that if you want to study Poland, you're going to apply to programs that have a strong Polish presence and not a program that has, say, a stronger expertise in Turkey and not Poland. As you're researching degree programs, study the websites. There's a lot of rich information there. Talk with the program staff, and you have a great opportunity here to make a connection, and also see if you can talk to current students. Find out what the program strengths and the institution strengths are. Find out what the community is like. Who's part of the community? Are there faculty, many affiliated faculty or research scholars? Do you have a really strong library collection in your area? Are there a large core of doctoral students in other programs? Is there an unusual art collection or music collection that might be of interest? Talk to them, because the program staff know what the institution has and can help elevate and highlight the really great aspects of the institution and the community. One thing to also check is how available faculty are for graduate students. I put master's students, but it's graduate students. If you've got faculty who are fabulous experts, but they're also being consultants on lots of projects and are out of the country, that may factor into your decision one way or another. They take you along, that might be a good thing. If they're not available because they're on a consulting or they're on leave, that's another consideration. As you're looking at programs, there are going to be some slight differences, but this may factor into your long-term plan. Is it a 1-year or 2-year program or longer? Do they ask for a thesis? Or is there a baseline level of language proficiency? Are there degree requirements? Say, if you need to take an economics course, do you need to have multivariable calculus ahead of time to take that course? Do they expect you to have a second or to start a second language in the region? And I know there'll be discussions about this, but what does the program cost? And do they have funding for master's students? It's a 1 or 2 year degree, so loans are available, but if this is a consideration, you may want to keep that in mind. You may also want to think about, whether you want to do a terminal master's in combination with one of these other joint degrees in public policy or an MBA, public health, data science, journalism, urban studies, a law degree. So there may be opportunities to build on another area of strength in an institution. But you should check with the REEES program manager to see, and the other side of that joint degree, to see how they work and what are the potential pitfalls. Is it whether it is doable to do 2 degrees in 2 years or 3 years, or if there's students doing these dual degrees, that might actually be a good source of insight. As Ian mentioned, these are not necessarily about doctoral programs. So a terminal master's, if you are looking into a doctoral program, it might not lead to admissions, the terminal master's. So again, you should talk to your program director, associate director about that. Another thing to think about, which can get overlooked, but is an important thing, are the cost of living in the area. Is there on-campus housing? Is there off-campus housing? Is there subsidized housing? Are you going to have to drive to campus or take public transportation? Will you need a car? Will you need parking? Think about health insurance. If you're someone who is working with a physical therapist or a therapist or is undergoing orthodontic work, you may need to work with your treater to see if you're covered under the school's health insurance or if you can get a referral. But also think about what you need to flourish and thrive. Are you someone who has to have bike paths? You need to get on that bike once a week, or you will you will not be as strong a student. Do you need a religious community or a music group or something like those sorts of things that are also part of the experience? If you need to be in a community that has a lot of students studying in this field, ask that. So my last thing is also to think about some other options. So you see, I've listed 5 here. They're not the only options, but a job or something like the Fulbright or Peace Corps or language immersion, they may give you some of the same skills as a terminal master's. They may also set you up really well to be successful in a terminal master's program, or they may be great next steps after a master's program. So don't, as you're looking at this, remember that this is also out there as part of the ecosystem in the field. And ultimately, the right answer is there isn't one that I can give you. It's going to be what's right for you. But I hope this gives you a little bit of a roadmap to think about how to make an informed decision. So with that, I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schlosberg. We welcome questions now in the Q&A function. Perhaps while we're waiting for our first one, I'll pose a quick one. You started to touch on this, but these types of programs are much shorter than, say, a bachelor's. So what are some of the ways in which that should affect our thinking about this? Is it less of a commitment for students to think about? Is it somehow even more important? What are some of the factors that come in when we think about just choosing a place to be for 1 or 2 years?
Right. So it's a great question, Ian. This is very much, a bachelor's degree tends to be a very general, so you have usually a breadth of general education requirements and a depth. And I've heard enough of these graduation ceremonies. They prepare you to be educated citizens and contributors to the world. A master's starts to get more specialized and has an expertise. They're more condensed, so you will be doing a lot of intense work in one focused area. You might think of it as your major on steroids. But you will not have, you may not be able to do the kind of extracurriculars that you do elsewhere. It may be really hard to do a master's and a full-time job. You will also likely have colleagues who are coming in, say, from the military, who are doing a very specialized training in a region. You will have people from different age groups. It's not going to be as likely a traditional age 17 to 23-year-old undergraduate. It is more of a, it's intense. It doesn't mean that you can't explore in the same way you did as an undergraduate, but it is more focused, and that can be great because you get a lot of intersection and synergies between your courses. And the pace, the pace will vary. I'm at a school right now that's on the quarter system, and it requires as many courses as a semester. It has a one-year terminal master's, but it requires as many courses as a two-year program at a semester school. So there are those kind of local academic calendar variations to keep in mind. And one thing to think about is if you do have like a one-year master's and there's a thesis requirement, you're going to have to be ready pretty early on to jump in and identify a thesis topic and get going with that. So that's just something to keep in mind. So I would say the intensity is different, but it's also, you're also surrounded by people with the same sort of interest and passion.
Great, thank you. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. I know that some of them have already been answered in writing by a couple of our panelists, but I'll pose both of them here one at a time. The first is whether your list of considerations for evaluating a master's program is available in print somewhere. It's
available on these slides, so if the slides will be available, we can circulate them for it as things to think about. But no, they're not formally published anywhere, but you may be able to do a similar search on Google, say, and find considerations for terminal masters. Ian, is it okay if we share these with the community?
Yes, if that's fine with you, that would be wonderful.
That'd be great.
And again, we hope to make this recording available very soon, so everyone can come back and watch this once again. We also had a question about whether many students from the, I think it's Central East Europe region, come to study in REEES programs in the United States.
Could you repeat the question?
Do many students from the CEE region come to study in the REEES programs in the United States?
I think I'll defer to my colleagues from the different programs to talk about the populations that enroll and that are admitted and enroll in their programs.
I see we've had a couple responses in writing there. Marcy Shore from Yale writes, "My impression is yes." Mitchell Orenstein from Penn says, "We have scholarships for Russian students to study the region." All right, another question from the Q&A. Can students whose foreign language abilities are still being developed still succeed in one of these master's programs?
Again, I'm going to defer to my colleagues on that. It's going to depend, I think, on the individual institution's degree requirements and where they and the level of language proficiency they expect at matriculation, and then what they encourage to be developed.
Perhaps I'll ask we hold off on that question. Then we're going to have a long Q&A session with the various faculty. I just want to make sure we do have a couple more questions. If we have a chance to get to some that are posed directly to Dr. Schlosberg during this shorter Q&A, we prioritize those. So Darek Kajanov, who is a faculty member, writes, "Many students are not focused enough to pursue an MA after their bachelor's. In general, is it to their benefit to wait and acquire some life and job experience before thinking about the master's? How many years is acceptable and when is it too late? Also, what kind of career fields typically will pay for an employer's master's program?"
I see Mitchell has answered some of them, and I agree with Mitchell that for the last question, generally it's businesses that will pay for an MBA. I don't know if they will necessarily pay for a terminal master's. I look at our undergraduates, and sometimes some of them would benefit from a gap year just because they've been on the treadmill of heavy work and heavy schoolwork since kindergarten. So a gap year is not necessarily a bad thing. But if it really does depend on the student and their motivation, and also what the program, the rigors of the program and what they recommend and what their admissions criteria are.
Yeah, can I jump in, please? Yeah,
Please.
I think that, yes, thank you, Laura. Absolutely. I think it all has to do with the kind of program that you're offering. And I'm going to be speaking very briefly later on about a translation master's at Hunter. So many of our students who are majoring in translation or even in Russian, I would qualify as ready for a translation program as a master's program. So it is really dependent on the level of competence and preparation and how you assess it. So if we're talking in general terms about, literature and culture and Russian studies or European culture and literature and so on, then perhaps there will be more of a preparation period. But some of our students are ready to jump in.
We've had a couple of questions that have been answered, but again, I want to be able to pose some of these for Dr. Schlosberg and perhaps others who would like to chime in verbally here. I have a couple that are focused on post-graduation. So how can prospective students evaluate what the career opportunities will be upon graduation?
That is, I think the pandemic has thrown that all up in the air. I think there is local institutions do have local career offices, and there are usually alumni networks in the REEES fields. So that is a way to gauge. I heard one of the experts at my institution say that the field sometimes benefits from what's happening in the Kremlin, so we can't always predict that. But I think it's in the same way that a terminal master's gives you a strong skill set, and it's a question of aligning the job you want with the skills you have and identifying what you need. So I do think I agree with Mitchell and Donna. Talk to the program staff because opportunities change all the time, and the opportunities that are available now may be different in 6 months, they may be different in 2 years.
Do you have any more advice for low-income students who are looking to pursue these programs?
So I see Mitchell has addressed that about scholarships. Again, it's thinking about the cost and whether you may need to take out loans, and also think about if you want to do something in, say, an NGO or in a nonprofit, if you're required to take out loans, if you're willing to budget that as part of your post MA career, and how that all factors in. It's a very personalized decision, and there are people who can help with that. Donna, yes, and there may be institutional funds available. And again, so yes, your local program director is the best source of information about where to get financial aid and support.
Can you elaborate on the benefits of student membership in a CEAS that you mentioned for potential graduate students? I haven't been referred to that association before.
So ACES is an international organization of scholars and professionals working in the field of Slavic, Eurasian, and East European studies. It is at least, I'm going to look at my colleagues, at least 50 years old. It must be older, predates. Yes, okay. It is a valuable network for understanding trends in the field, not just in terms of scholarship, but issues that are coming up. It connects, it's a way to connect with scholars and other professionals in those regions. I think everybody could give a sentence or two about the value of the organization, just for having a community of peers who are interested in the same sorts of issues. It can be very helpful for identifying potential programs or people you want to work with in terms of scholars, seeing what kind of questions are being asked. People who have their pulse on current events, whether it's Belarus or Ukraine or Turkey or Afghanistan. It's a professional organization, but I think it can bring a lot of value. And I think they have student membership rates. You can definitely go to the website. Can we pop that somewhere? Just the website and the list that you'll be sharing, Ian, so people can at least explore what's there.
Yeah, I put the general website in the chat. We have time maybe for one more quick one. This is coming out the chat. How important is it to get into the best, highest ranked program?
I think at graduate school, it's more important to find a scholar who you want to work with and who wants to work with you. That's, and what is considered best is going to vary. Do you want to get into the best in terms of what US News and World Report says based on their undergraduate admissions? Or do you want the institution where the best scholar in Polish politics is working? So this is more about aligning you with the institution and the institution's faculty. So there is no one best, it's what's best for you. Now, if you're looking to go into something like a consulting firm, they may look differently if you've gone to an Ivy school, but not necessarily. But if you're going to go into consulting, I don't know that this, that's a separate conversation. So again, it's thinking differently from undergraduate applications, and our colleagues here can add a lot of, can add their insights since they're in the programs and know what they're best at.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schlosberg. We will have time for additional Q&A and invite Dr. Schlosberg to continue to contribute to that in about 10 minutes. We're now going to hear quickly from all of our program representatives who are joining us this afternoon. Just briefly speaking about the terminal master's degrees in REEES field that their university or college offers, briefly what professions graduates from those programs typically pursue successfully afterward, and one thing that they find particularly special or particularly helpful in helping their students to succeed in their particular programs. Feel free again to write in with questions at any point during the introductions, but we will hold off on those questions until after the 7th participant speaks. We want the Q&A to be discussion, and so questions directed to more than just a single speaker will probably receive preference. And as I turn this over first to Natasha Bluth from NYU to speak, I'm going to put a link here to a page that has a full listing of institutions in our network, including for those programs that are joining us this afternoon, in particular, the links to these various master's programs. That serves as a general reference point for all of the programs you'll hear discussed this afternoon. Natasha Bluth, please introduce us to NYU.
Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Bluth. I'm representing the NYU Global and Joint Program Studies, which is a dual degree master's based in the Arthur L. Carter Journalism Institute and the Russian and Slavic Studies Department at NYU. NYU also offers a standalone master's in Russian and Slavic Studies. But I'm an alumna of the former program, actually. I'm standing in today for the current director, Jason Maloney. So I'm able to talk a little bit more about that, and I'll focus on that here. This is a program that prepares students in research, reporting, and writing, as well as a multimedia skill set, at the same time that it deepens knowledge about the Russian or Slavic world. Students go on to a wide range of professions after this degree. On the more journalism side, they may do internships or fellowships both during the master's or directly after that turn into staff positions. Many continue freelancing at a variety of outlets, ranging from ProPublica to Vice to Washington Post. And then also some turn to fellowships such as the Fulbright program, Report for America, or the New Republic's Reporter Researcher Fellowship to further strengthen the skills that they started to build at NYU. Students also go into research positions in the TV and film industry, nonprofit work, think tanks, consulting, teaching, and others continue to pursue their studies in a PhD program. And then when I was thinking about what's special about this program, I really couldn't focus on one thing. I think there are three I'd like to highlight. But the first is just the dualistic nature of this degree. It's so unique in this respect, in that you can receive journalistic training and all these practical skills at the same time that you're really becoming a specialist in your region of interest. There's also this wonderful course that's actually taught by Jason Maloney, who is a longtime producer at PBS NewsHour, that brings students to a destination abroad during the spring break to report out video stories for PBS NewsHour and other outlets. So this was a highlight of my time at NYU, and we went to Ukraine for that class. And I'm happy to talk about more of that later. And then finally, on the Russian side of things, the Jordan Center for the Advanced Study of Russia is also affiliated with the NYU Russian and Slavic department. And that offers really wonderful range of events, panels, colloquia with some of the key specialists in the field that I found very illuminating as well. So thank you so much. Happy to answer questions later on about any of this.
Thank you. Oliver Carling.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver. I'm the Assistant Director of the Catherine Wasserman Davis School of Russian at Middlebury College, also known as the Russian School. You may have heard about our summer immersion program, where all students sign our language pledge. We also offer an MA program. And beginning this year, we're adding to our traditional MA an applied MA with a specialization in diplomacy. So I'll tell you a little bit about each of those programs. Both MA programs begin with a 6-week session in the summer in Middlebury, so in the immersion environment. All graduate courses, the entire program is conducted exclusively in Russian. I think that's the most distinctive feature of our MA programs. All MA students are eligible to apply for financial aid in the form of grants from Middlebury as well, and we meet 100% of need during the summer, so it can be quite affordable. The traditional MA is very flexible. You can complete it over 4 summers. This works great for students who have something else going on during the academic year. Maybe they're working and they can take time off every couple of summers. Maybe they're pursuing a PhD at another institution and they want to come to us for the language component during the summer. We also have abroad tracks. So you can combine summer study in Vermont with study in Russia for a semester or an academic year at one of our partner universities, Moscow, Irkutsk, Yaroslavl. All students present a thesis in the final summer at the Graduate Symposium, which is a mini conference that we organize during the summer. The new MA program, we call it the Applied MA in Russian with a specialization in diplomacy. This is a program that takes 14 months to complete. Summer in Vermont, academic year, taking courses at MGIMO, Moscow Institute. At Moscow State Institute of International Relations, and then a final summer either doing an internship or returning to Vermont and presenting a thesis. So about what our students go on to do after the MA program, some students are already working in government. We have a current Foreign Service officer who's coming to us for the MA, but we have students who go on to work in government, State Department, and so forth. We have students who work at NGOs and international organizations such as Human Rights Watch. We have students who go on to work as journalists, work in business or the arts. And increasingly, we have a lot of students, as I mentioned, who are simultaneously pursuing an MA or a PhD at another institution and coming to us to really sharpen their Russian language proficiency. So During the breakout session, I can also talk about some of the programs at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies on the West Coast, which sort of complement what we do, but are in some respects different. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Becca Dalton.
Hi, I'm Becca, and I am the program manager at the Harriman Institute at Columbia University. And we administer a MARS REEES degree, so a regional studies degree. And we are the oldest institute in the nation, and we have a very wide-ranging faculty, and we are the, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only regional institute that includes, you know, the Balkans, East Central Europe, Russia, the post-Soviet states, Central Asia. So we're a little bit larger in our scope. We would like to be a 2-year master's program. You are able to do it in 1 year. And to talk a bit about what our students do after, some of them do pursue journalism, although they don't have journalism degrees. So we do have REEESNe on site with us. And so our students are able to publish even while they're still students. So they go on to have journalism careers. We also have an increasing number of students going into political risk analysis, which is somewhat similar to consulting, but is its own niche. We do have people in the State Department, the security agencies, and of course, NGOs, right? So, so we kind of have a wide range of students as well. We like to have them have different interests, and of course into PhDs. And I would say that we tend to see history as more of an interest in our students, just kind of happens that way, right? It fills that gap as you prepare for a history PhD. And to say what's interesting and unique about Harriman, I'm also an alum. I would say that the community is amazing, right? We're in New York City. We have about 8 to 10 students each year. They have diverse interests. We get to also see the Harvard students at least once a year. So it feels like a larger community for us. And I think in the last 5 years, the biggest change that we've had is to create a mentorship program to harness our alums and also those that are, you know, Harriman adjacent, our community members who are interested in the region and who we can tap into. So we're pairing our students with mentors in their first year to help them to kind of focus their careers and be ready for graduation, which I think is one of the most difficult things that students in a terminal MA, especially regional studies, it's interdisciplinary in nature. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So that's something that we've been trying to tackle at Harriman.
Thank you. Donna Griesenbach.
Hi there, everybody. Great to see you. I am the Student Programs Officer at the Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies at Harvard, where we offer the 2-year multidisciplinary master's program in Russia, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. Our emphasis is on the social sciences and history, very high, strong emphasis on language proficiency in a single regional language, although a number of our students do choose to pursue a second regional language. We require a thesis, and there's a fair amount of room in your schedule to cross-register and bring in courses at Harvard professional schools. This is not a formal joint program with any of those schools, but it gives you the opportunity to, say, build your policy writing, policy memo writing skills, or learn about human rights law, or other things that will help to prepare you for your post master's career. Types of careers that our students go into after graduation would include, usually a couple of them will go on for PhD programs. It's not always the people who started out thinking that was what they wanted to do. And they get into really top PhD programs. So we offer a really great preparation for that. A lot of people will go on into some form of government service with the US or foreign governments. There's diplomacy, the various security and intelligence agencies. There's also private sector, a fair number of people going into private sector and kind of government adjacent roles. International organizations like UN, World Bank, the OECD, journalism is an important area. We also have a lot of people go on to do at least like for a year, a fellowship of one kind or another, whether it's a Fulbright or something like the Alpha Fellowship, which is a professional development program. What is unique about our program, I think, is really the strong links with the Davis Center and strong links with our alumni community. There's a fantastic, warm and supportive community with a lot of resources, and there's a lot of flexibility to kind of customize and individualize your program of study. So it's great for someone who is kind of where you have an idea of where you want to go, and there are a lot of resources, both human and financial, to help you get to where you want to be. So I look forward to talking to you in the chat later. And if you missed out on that, please feel free to reach out to me via our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mitchell Orenstein.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for joining this webinar. I'm Mitchell Orenstein. I'm a professor of Russian and East European Studies from University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And we have a brand new master's program in Russian and East European Studies that actually has admitted its first cohort this year. It's a joint Russian and American program. And we have students, both Russian, I guess, nationals, as well as non-Russian nationals, primarily United States citizens. So the thing that's really unique, I mean, we came into this crowded and distinguished field just recently, and the thing that's really unique about our program is that you spend 1 year at University of Pennsylvania, the first year of the program, and then the second year you spend in St. Petersburg, Russia, at the European University of St. Petersburg. And you end up with degrees from both institutions. It's a dual degree program. So that's really different, I think, unique, exciting. We have the other piece that we have is some competitive, not all students, but we have a number of competitive scholarships that have been provided by the Polymetal Foundation. And then we have, because we have kind of this joint program, and we have some students coming from Russia and some going to Russia, it kind of is a fairly diverse cohort in that way, though it's not all Americans, and it's a diverse group, pretty interesting. In terms of where they go, we're not sure yet. I mean, I think it'll be similar to the profile of these other programs. A number of them have had State Department internships and appear to be moving in that kind of direction. I don't know from the Russian students exactly where they will end up. I think they're a somewhat different group, and just not sure at all about that. But I think it's an exciting program. And I think the other thing is that the cohort, because there is this move, ends up being quite close in a unique sort of way, right? I'm sure that it's true that the cohorts in all these institutions are quite close. But this one is quite close insofar as they sort of move together through the program, like physically move to a different country in the middle of the program, and are thrown into a kind of self-reliance or on one another because of that, right? And come to depend on each other quite a lot. It's also a bit different in a way because of the language training. And I think honestly that all these programs offer fantastic language training, although there is some limitations to how much language training you can get in 2 years, maybe not at Middlebury, but elsewhere. But I think that we have a bit of a unique take on that too, because after you finish your semester at Penn, and say in April, May, we send people directly to St. Petersburg to spend, intensive Russian in St. Petersburg, and then do summer projects, and then come back to do a whole year of study at European University. So that's a little bit of a twist on this thing. So that's really all I have to say. I mean, I think it's exciting, interesting. If you have questions, I'm very happy to answer them. You can always find me on the web. I'm very searchable. Mitchell Ornstein, just write to me. But I'm happy to answer them in the window as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadia Peterson.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk to everybody about our program. And thank you so much, Ian, for organizing this. It has been wonderful to hear from all of the colleagues in different universities about various programs and attempts to educate people who are interested in Russian and eager to pursue their careers in this field. I think that our Hunter program is different from everything that you all have discussed because we are a public institution, and we, from experience in giving or offering undergraduate programs in language and translation, have discovered that there is a huge need of specialists in interpreting and translation in Russian at this particular time. We're situated in New York. In our undergraduate programs, we have been in translation. We have been sending our students to work in various internships in various places, such as libraries and medical facilities and municipal offices and so on. And we have discovered that this area, New York, also perhaps the rest of the country, needs certain expertise and needs a lot of students who are really competent or specialists who are competent in providing translation and knowledge to politicians or whoever. So we decided to pursue a graduate degree in translation, not only Russian, we also have Chinese and Spanish, also Arabic and Italian are joining in. But for me, of course, as the person who is in charge of Russian and Slavic, it's very important to broadcast this effort to the rest of the people involved. This is a 2-year program. You can do it in 2 years. You can do it slower if your finances do not allow you to do so. You are trained in machine technology, translation, various things associated with translation. And everybody was talking about placing people after the graduation. That's totally not a problem because there are so many people in this area, particularly, who are very eager to get our graduates to work for us. So totally excited about this opportunity to broadcast, to announce this program. And if you have any questions, Ian posted a description. We'll be very happy to answer anything you want to ask. Thank you.
Great. And our last participant, Marcy Shore. Marcy, I think we need you to unmute.
Hello, I'm Marcy Shore. I'm not very good on Zoom. I'm an associate professor of history at Yale, and I recently, a year ago, took over as DGS of our MA program in European and Russian Studies at the Macmillan Center at Yale. My colleague, Christina Andriatis, who is here, has been working with the program longer. She is the program director, and she can answer practical questions much better than I can because, as she knows, I'm a bit administratively challenged. But I can tell you conceptually a bit about our program. Let me first say, listening to Oliver, that I learned Russian at Middlebury in 1999. I'm incredibly nostalgic about it. It was by far the best language learning experience I ever had in my life. If there were a way for me to, like, take a vacation from my life and go back and do it every summer, I would. I went in there, I didn't even know the Russian alphabet. I didn't even know Cyrillic. And 9 weeks later, I was thinking completely in Russian, and they just pummeled it into me, and it was wonderful. Okay, but I won't talk about that right now. So
Thank you.
So-
That's very nice to hear. Thank you.
No, it was amazing. I will say a couple things about languages while I guess I'm on that subject. So we run an interdisciplinary MA program that covers not just Russia and Eastern Europe, but covers all of Europe. And students come in on one of two tracks. They're either focusing primarily on, Western and Central Europe, or they're focusing primarily on kind of Central and Eastern Europe. And of course, the central part, there's kind of an overlap. So it's not such a hard and fast distinction. All students are required to take at least 2 courses in the part of Europe they are not focusing on. So there is some insistence on breadth. So it's geographically quite broad. And students come with interest in everything from, post-Soviet Eurasia, all the way through EU policy and, Britain, France, Portugal, Spain. So it's very broad. It's also interdisciplinary. And there are distribution requirements that insist that students take classes in a variety of different disciplines, history, literature, law, social sciences. That leaves an incredible array of classes to choose from. And so the students who I think tend to enjoy it most have an idea of what they want to do, because it could otherwise seem overwhelming. I mean, the benefit of the program is the flexibility, to encompass so many different kinds of interest, and of course the drawback is that students can drown in that if they have no idea what they're interested in or what they want to do. It's not like translation studies. There's not like a core set of courses that everybody is taking. It's a rigorous program. It is 16 courses over 4 semesters, at a minimum to graduate. You need L4 proficiency in at least 2 different languages. I think students should not try to come in without a significant amount of language preparation. Either one language that they are absolutely proficient in, and working on starting to work on a second one, or 2 languages in which they're at least at the intermediate level. I mean, otherwise, I think the coursework is such that there is not space in that 2 years realistically and reasonably to start from scratch and master 2 languages. And I feel committed to the language requirement. I think that's one of the things we do, in these kind of regional studies. Americans are traditionally terrible, with foreign languages. I think in some subliminal way, like a lot of Americans believe that life that happens in other languages is not actually real. I think it's one of our kind of, existential intellectual challenges, monolingualism, not just as a linguistic deficit, but as an imaginative deficit that causes all sorts of problems. And one of the things that we're committed to doing in this program, and I like to think at universities in general, is to, helping the country move forward by understanding that real life is going on in many other parts of the world as well. In terms of students coming from different countries, one thing that happened just before I took over this program, and which in fact influenced my willingness to take over the program, despite the fact that I hate all administrative work and have always tried to get out of it. But one of the reasons why I agreed to take this was that just as I took it on, we had dropped the GRE requirement. And the dropping the GRE requirement was very important to me, not just because, standardized tests are stressful and they have racist implications and class implications, but I had never felt, I mean, as a Slavicist, of course, we all do this. Like, I've worked with many students in different parts of the world who are not formally speaking my students, but they're, my colleagues, students in Ukraine or Belarus or Poland or wherever they are, like we all are in touch with our colleague students and have relationships with them. And I had always been very reluctant to recruit anybody and kind of encourage students in former, the former communist world, be it post-Soviet or Eastern Europe, to apply for these American programs, in part because the cost of the application was so high. And even if you can get a fee waiver, what you have to put in to prepare for the GREs if you did not go through the American system, even if you have good English, if you haven't been trained in American or American style universities, it's a lot of work to prepare for the GREs. You're taking a different kind of standardized test in a foreign language. It's an investment of time, of energy and money, and you still don't have any guarantee that this investment is going to pay off. So I've always been very hesitant, about encouraging people to do this because I think it's a risk and it is a cost. Once we dropped the GRE requirement, I somehow felt kind of free to recruit because I felt like the cost to students who were applying was going to be so much lower. And they can often get a fee waiver for the application fee. And of course, they have to take the TOEFL. I mean, that makes sense. You shouldn't be coming to a program in a language that you don't speak well enough because you're setting yourself up for failure. The GRE, I think, is different. That's led to, I think, a great opening for more students to come.
I'm so sorry to have to break in, but I do want
I'm talking
to I think you touched on a really important question that came up earlier, which maybe we can just ask briefly for everyone to weigh in on. Are there other programs represented here where this question of language preparedness is less of a make or break when it comes to admitting students? Perhaps just those of you who, without qualification, could just briefly state if you feel yours is one such institution.
Yes, can I answer, please?
Please.
Yes, we require a language assessment, obviously. Most of our students come from a heritage background, so it is less of a hurdle. Still, they do need an assessment. It's a requirement, but we do not require a GRE.
Great. Just briefly, others want to weigh in this?
Yeah, actually, so we have had students come in and place in first year Russian, and I will say that it makes their life miserable, right? Because they're having to take so much language, and their summer has to be, Middlebury or the Russian practicum at Columbia, so they don't have as much space to pursue their interests. So it's possible, it's not recommended. Right. I think that if you are at all uncomfortable with your language level before you come to a program like this, try and do a language program the summer before you come. Right. It helps to refresh and get you a bit more prepared.
At Penn, we don't have a formal language requirement for admissions, but of course your application's more is more competitive if you have language. And in fact, our first cohort either has intermediate level or it has advanced level Russian. So generally speaking, I don't know if a lot of people are applying to these programs without any language experience. And part of the issue is what I was saying about 2 years. Sometimes 2 years is not quite enough to start from scratch to get up to a high level of 4-level proficiency. So that's just another thing to keep in mind.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. The next 15 minutes are dedicated to separate meetings with each of our institutions, which will also include not only the Harriman Institute, but also representative on Columbia's side from the Slavic department. We have 15 minutes or so scheduled for this. It's not a lot of time. Plan to go to 1, maybe 2, if you feel brave about skipping between a couple of them. All the links for these Zoom meetings can be found on the website that I just posted in the chat. If you're interested in Yale's, simply stay put and you can be changed from an attendee to a participant, so you can be seen and heard. All the other meetings are simply Zoom meetings where you will automatically come in. So keep in mind that